November 22nd, 2006. And Mom and I are here at her house baking Christmas cookies. And we're just taking a short break. And Mom's going to talk to us today about some of her Christmas memories and traditions that she had growing up. And in the end, she's going to share a couple of original poems that her sister Helen Malick wrote as part of a creative writing class that she went to with Mom at Housatonic Community College in 1987. And they are precious poems that they wrote and have been shared with many people. Now, some early childhood memories of how you celebrated Christmas, any traditions that you remember your mom having decorated, and presents that you got.
Well, I remember once I was very little and I was playing in the backyard, and my mother came and told me to come in because Santa had come by and he left me a present. And when I came in, it was a doll carriage. And I said, "Why didn't you call me when he came?" And she said, "Well, he was so busy. He had to hurry on his way." So that's what I heard about that. And I didn't ask any more questions. And then I remember, as a little girl, I was in a big assembly, and all the classes marched in, and I was about 5 years old, and someone gave me a balloon, and I blew the balloon, and lo and behold, it made a big noise. And the teacher on the stage said, "Whoever made that noise, on your way out when you're marching to class, step out over here." So imagine how it looked when a little 5-year-old came up to the teacher, and I said, "Someone gave me this balloon," and she just told me to get back in line. And I always remember that. And I had a girlfriend. They nicknamed her Googie from when she was a very little girl. And there were 9 children in the family. And she always taught us something. And we were only young school kids. And she said, "You know, you could get on the bus free, and we could go over town, and we could get a Santa Claus book." So I was a follower. So we get on the bus and we get the book. And then on the way home, just as I was getting off the bus, the driver said, "You didn't put any money in." And I looked at him. What was I going to say? And he says, "Oh, your mother gave you money and you spent it." And so we got off the bus. I don't remember anything about the book, only that part. At Christmas time, we always had a Christmas tree. And the day before, my father would buy a tree, and he would be fixing it to be able to stand in the stand that we had. And that was always memorable. And it was Depression time. And he went out to get a tree the night before, and he said there wasn't hardly any around. And he came home with the little Christmas tree that just fit on a card table. And I could always remember Will. Her disappointment was so great, and her eyes were all big, and she says, "Oh, is that all you could have?" And he says, "There wasn't any around. This was the only thing I could get." And so we enjoyed that, because there were some who didn't even have a tree because it was poor times. And we had a landlord who was very nice to our family, And I remember every Christmas I would get a book, and sometime I would wish, why can't I get something like some article of clothing or something? But I would open the book, and my goodness, they were always interesting. And I could remember as Willie was washing the dishes, I would dry him and read a page, and dry more dishes and read a page, and nobody yelled at me. And I was at Harding High School, and it was Christmas time, and the students were having a vacation. And when I was a senior, we were told that when we come back to school, we could contribute something for the yearbook and see whose would be chosen. You could read the class poem, a prophecy, or a will. And I wrote a class will. And when we went back to school, the teacher called me. Her name was Miss Hoffman. And she says, Miss Schmidt, your class will was chosen. It had a sense of humor. They were all pretty much the same, but yours had a humorous flair. And so she says I should come after school, and she was going to teach me the proper way to stand and face as I recited. And I felt I was a shy person. I says, oh, if I knew that, I wouldn't have wrote that. And she said, now, Miss Schmidt, don't say that. And so the day came when we had a class dinner, and the people that wrote the poem, prophecy, and will were seated at the speaker's table, and they could bring a friend. And I brought my dear friend, Helen Brummer, who became Helen Gelb. And when I recited the class will, they would laugh at things that I said. And my goodness, I was wishing I wrote much more. Can you beat that? That seemed to be the beginning of my reciting. And when our ladies group elected officers one time, I met the new president in the parking lot. And she says, Emma, we like to have nice things happen to make our year very enjoyable. And I had just read a Christian book. And I says, you could have people give a synopsis on a Christian book. And then she says to me, how about you? And of course, I says, oh, I couldn't do that. I never did that. Oh, I couldn't do that. And she was a high school teacher, and she says, Emma, it's very simple. You just have a piece of paper with short notes to guide you in your talk. And that's all there is to it. So I says, all right, I'll do it. And it really worked. And that seemed to be the beginning of my life. And I think the big thing that was really a change was recently I would sit at the table with my half and half cream, and I would read the advertising on it. And one specific one, I forget the name of the dairy, but it says, add something to your life. And so adding the half and half was something. But I looked at it very seriously, and I thought, I'm 88 years old. What could I add now? And I thought I could add, I had some short poems and stuff that I could read. And that was my ending. The last thing was a poem that I wrote, and my sister Helen wrote, and I wanted everybody to hear for in memory of my sister Helen. And this is the one I wrote. Christmas shopping. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So busy shoppers say. There's bargains galore. And so at the store, we pay and we pay and we pay. As registers ring, the choirs do sing of Santa and toys and holiday joys, and shepherds proclaim our Christ who came. And this poem I'm going to read now, my sister Helen Malik wrote. We were at the Black Rock Church, and they had a live creche scene as part of the Christmas program that we attended. And this is the poem that Helen wrote. Was there really a carpenter called Joseph who married Mary so meek and mild? Is it true she had a baby named Jesus who is said was God's own child? Did the baby just lie in that manger like a doll, not able to coo? Or did he cry when hungry and hurting, the way real babies do? Like statues in a creche, did the parents stand motionless there just so? Or did she feed him, burp him, and change him, then say, pick him up, Joe? Maybe she said thank you for coming to her visitors who came that day. Shepherd, would you like to hold him? Don't be nervous, I'll show you the way. Did she say, bless you, thank you, kings, as they handed the presents to her? The gold will sure come in handy, and I'm fresh out of frankincense and myrrh. For those who know Jesus as Savior, there's no doubt the story is true. For others, it's merely a fable. I believe, I hope you do too. I had a couple other things that you want to know about.
I want to know about...
It was for my birthday. It was for my birthday.
And how old were you?
13.
13?
Yeah, I wanted a big doll. I didn't get it.
Uh-oh.
And I cried.
Yeah?
I hopped the bus and went over town and bought one somewhere.
Wow.
And came back with it. So I got some things about when I was in the assembly and I blew the balloon.
Yeah. Okay.
Should I write that?
We'll talk about that.
Okay. I was remembering a few things about way back when. I was probably a kindergarten age. And I remember standing by the door to get into school. I was in line, and it was a cold winter day, and the small boy stuck his tongue on the door, and it stuck because it was icy. But I didn't wait to see what happened. The teacher came out, and I went in. Another thing I remember as a 5-year-old, all the children filed into a big assembly. And all I remember mostly is someone gave me a balloon. And while I sat there, I blew the balloon. And when the air came out, it made a big whistle. Imagine this little girl making a noise like that in this big assembly. And the teacher on the stage said, whoever do that as you file out to class, step out. So when we went by, I stepped out, and I think she was shocked to see this wee little girl. And she says, get back in line. but I always remember that incident. And once I was having a birthday, and I was 13 years old, I believe, maybe 12. And my mother said, "What would you like?" And I said, "I wanted a big doll." And she says, "Oh, Emma, you're getting so grown up to want that." And when my birthday came, I didn't have a big doll. And I remember I cried. And my mother saw how sad I was, and she went out and hopped the bus and came back with the doll for me. But I like to sew. I sewed for little tiny dolls and made all sorts of things. And I think I was planning to sew for my big doll because I did keep up with sewing. And even when my sister had employment, I made a lot of her dresses, and I try to make them look very professional and not homemade. And I would often bring them to Singer's company where they would hem stitch parts or cover buttons, and I was very proud and happy to sew, and I made many doll clothes. And one time I remember my sister Ruth was a little girl, maybe 3 years old, and I made a dress for her, and she was taking a nap, and I woke her up to try the dress, and my mother scolded me and says, "Why did you do that? You woke her up." But I was so anxious to see how the dress came out. But I know I did a lot of sewing, and I made slip covers, and they were very professional, and I would make over coats for my children and design hats. I made a lot of things, but now my hands are kind of stiff. I haven't been doing it. I'm wearing out what I made. And I remember one time at Christmas, my sister Wilmina had her first job, and I remember at Christmas time, she bought 6 presents for some family down the street who were rather poor, and she bought them all a present, and I thought that was pretty great. She had a big heart. And so, after reading that item on the half and half milk container to add something, I'm looking for things to add to make people smile and enjoy. And I especially like to read those poems that I wrote and my sister Helen wrote. Every year I feel this compulsion that I've got to read them. It's a memory. And that's it.